Hello and welcome to Young and Digital. My guest for today is Milind Deora, Member of Parliament for Congress from South Mumbai. Milind, thank you very much for joining us. I will stand for what is right, even if I have to stand alone. Will you? Is what you're asking your constituents. What are they saying?
Well, I think when I said that, I was referring to some of the stands I've taken in the past on various issues.
Three I can think of: RTI, Adarsh, and Ordnance.
Right. So I think the most sort of well-known issue and the stand that I took was on the ordnance issue, where I spoke out against an ordinance that all political parties had come together to promulgate to allow convicted MPs and MLAs to continue to remain MPs and MLAs. And I was one of the first few people in Indian politics who spoke out against that in spite of being from the government and the Congress party.
And I think what is common to all three is that all three are some issues where you stood up for something within the party rather than against.
Well, I believe that it starts from my political philosophy, which began in 2004 when I contested the first election. And I think it was Lyndon Johnson who said that I'm an American, I'm a free man, I'm an American, I'm a United States Senator and a Democrat in that order. And that's the politics I've tried to emulate in my 10 years, which is I'm first an Indian, then I'm a member of Parliament, and then I'm a member of the Congress party. And that's something which hopefully some of us can change attitudes in our country. We don't have that system as yet. But when I threw that question at my constituents, I wasn't only throwing that at voters, but at the polity in general. Because even if you look at RTI, very recently when there was a bill to amend RTI, and there was a debate whether it should be amended or it should be debated first within Parliament or a standing committee. Interestingly enough, there were few MPs cutting across party lines who came together, including me, and we said, let's send this to a standing committee of Parliament and let them deliberate on it and decide whether it should be amended, and if so, how should it be amended. So it's interesting because today we are seeing a new kind of, that's an interesting trend in Indian politics, where it's almost a coalition of individuals across political parties who are coming together in a bipartisan way to do the right things.
Yeah, so you've talked about that. Basically, the young people are all networking, rather the young politicians seem to be connecting on planes other than politics and therefore are doing things which are good for the country. So let me ask you, this is about really your vision at the larger level and then maybe specifics for young India. I mean, because I think the fact is that you may be young, but you may not be doing things for young India. Let me understand first, what does young India mean to you?
Young India to me means the fact that we have a huge demographic advantage. We're one of the few countries that has that advantage. Our neighbors next door don't have a relative disadvantage. If you look at Europe and Western countries, they have a humongous disadvantage with regards to ours. And it really means, creating the right human resources and the right skills for people to be informed first, which is why I'm happy with the work I've done as a minister in the Ministry of Telecommunications and IT, to get people access to information, get them access to the internet and telecommunication services. Secondly, to utilize that information to take informed decisions, whether it's a career choice, whether it's even about politics and civics. If you look at the political process today, young people account for a large % of voters in India. I'm very concerned about how young people vote. A, I'm concerned that they vote. B, if they do go out and vote, how do they vote? I'm one of the few who says, go out and vote and show a black ink on your finger. That's an important thing, but that's just 50% of the battle. The other 50% is how do you vote? Do you take an informed decision or do you just vote with a rebellious attitude of I've gone and voted? And so I think giving people access to information, making them aware, allowing a younger politician like myself to share his experiences of politics. The fact that I started out quite naive in 2004 and what I've learned about politics, what I've learned about elections, what I've learned about being a member of Parliament, what I've learned 3 years ago about being in government.
Yeah.
How they're all very different experiences. Yeah. Being an MP is very different from being a member of the government. And the way that I started out exactly a decade ago, when I was still idealistic, but I was naive. I was naive about how the system worked. And now I'm far more realistic about how it works. And I understand.
So which means you're challenging the system less?
No, it doesn't mean you're challenging the system less. It means that you understand how to get things done. At that time, if I had a goal, my ability and my way of achieving that goal was very different.
Give us an example.
Well, for example, say this ordnance issue. when I spoke out against this ordinance issue, in the past maybe I would have thought it's important that maybe a naive way of looking at it would have been, maybe I can talk to political parties. Maybe I should write a letter to a politician from even the opposition parties, because there is an all-party meet that agreed on that. That would have been a naive way of doing that, perhaps. That would have been maybe agitate in some ways. Those are naive ways of doing things. But then I said, I have a voice. I'm a minister in the government of India. I'm an elected member of parliament. If I spoke out, knowing fully well it might be controversial, but knowing fully well that it would provoke many others, including leaders of my own party, to speak out and support it, that was a realistic way of achieving that objective. So that's something I've learned in 10 years of politics. So the good thing is
but the common perception is that you spoke out after ensuring the backroom discussions.
No, that's absolutely
were done. Then someone spoke, and then you spoke, or you spoke.
No, that's completely untrue. I know that's a perception that it was an orchestrated plan to speak out, and
fair enough. But the point is taken. I think you did make your stance very clear, and
so I think that the point I'm making is that young people. So I want to share that experience with young people. I want to explain to them that, look, idealism is great, but being naive isn't that cool, because if you're naive, you're not going to understand, and you're not going to take an informed decision.
And this, you feel, can apply to all walks of life in your daily life. I mean, you're really telling young India this: be idealistic, because that's what this country needs, but then try and calibrate that idealism with some practicality.
Absolutely. Be informed, be smart. And so one of the things
and the digital world in some ways is helping you get informed, to which
it is, but it's at the same time, it's, as you know very well, it's with social media compared to, say, print media 10 years ago. It's also shrunk opinion cycles to 140 characters, and in 2 minutes you can brand someone corrupt and you can brand someone communal very easily. And that's also, in some ways, it's a welcome trend, because it's more information being spread and being decentralized. But at the same time, it's a scary trend also, because people aren't willing to go into the details.
Right. So young India also faces another problem that you face, I'm sure. You're young and working with a whole bunch of people who are much older, belong to a different generation, and go back several generations. Like we're talking about pre-independence, for instance. How do they tackle this frustration which they feel, or you've tackled this frustration as you feel? I mean, one is you've said, don't be naive, be realistic, but surely it's more than that.
Well, if you're asking me, are you asking me how do I work with people who are from different generations?
Older, much older, yeah.
Well,
as most people in young India face
I don't
today.
think any profession has more of a age divide than politics, frankly. And being a member of government, and I'm in charge of 2 ministries, shipping and telecom and IT, and working with a lot of colleagues who are young, but working with a lot of colleagues who are twice my age, who have a lot of experience under their belt. I think it's a great experience, because what I've learned is, for instance, if the Prime Minister is taking a review on the country's e-governance plan, and we are deliberating on it, and how do we improve e-governance, and how do we actually make more government services online and make them into electronic form, reduce the human interface, which obviously improves transparency, reduces corruption, things like that. Although there may be people in the room who may not be aware of the internet, they may not be aware of social media, and there may be people like me who are fully aware and relatively more tech savvy.
Are you referring to the Prime Minister?
No, I think there's a lot of people in the system who obviously come from a different generation.
Sure.
But yet their experience of governance, their experience of how do you take different departments along, the experience of how do we take this state department along. So for example, in e-governance, we've achieved a lot of success in Passport Seva Kendra, in income tax filing of your returns. Now, the way we did those things as pilot projects would not have been possible without the wisdom of those who have experience under it.
And they're also public-private partnerships.
They're public-private partnerships. That's more of a structural thing, but in terms of how do you get it off the ground, for that you need a lot of grey hairs. I have a few, but you need much more than that. And I think that's where, in any profession, but especially in governance and in government, having the right experience and the right mix of youth and experience, it really counts for us.
So that's I would say, the positive side. What's the frustration? And surely there's a disconnect.
Well, the frustration, frankly, isn't really an age. At least I've never encountered an age divide. So one of the biggest frustrations I have is, let's take, for example, a burning issue today. Let's take corruption and transparency and governance.
I'm going to come to that, yeah.
The frustration that I have is, what is the debate in our country today on that issue? It's either person A is for the Lokpal bill, person B is against the Lokpal bill. And then you can have variations of the Lokpal bill also. And it's become rhetorical. Yet if you ask a young person, who will come up to me and say, Mr. Deora, good that your government passed the Lokpal bill. If I ask them, do you know what the Lokpal bill is about? They may not know what it's about. And the frustration that I have is, one, we've zeroed down these discourses and debates into rhetorical statements and sound bites. And secondly, I don't even know if we're debating the core issue. So when I look at an issue like corruption, and I'm looking at how do I really reduce corruption, I'm not saying the Lokpal is not important. I think it's an important bill. And I was in Parliament when it was being discussed and debated and enacted. But I still ask myself whether adding more bureaucrats to oversee a set of bureaucrats who are overseeing another set of bureaucrats, is that the right solution? Is there a guarantee that those who are running the Lokpal may not be corrupted 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line like others, politicians and bureaucrats are? And therefore, my analysis of it is, maybe we need strong laws, and we do, but at the same time, is smaller and smarter government the answer to reducing corruption?
In a way, pointed to a solution, which is technology in one area, maybe of retail corruption. Right. What are the other such solutions in your mind where we can, or the government, past, present,
well, there are many things. I mean, so as I was saying, coming back to the point about youth, one of the things that I've tried to do in the last 5 years, when I fought my second election in 2009, and a lot of young people, when I was meeting them during the campaign trail, they were like, we're very disenchanted with the political process. When we turn on our television and we see MPs disrupting parliament, it troubles us. And as a 5-year-old MP, I didn't realize how much people had begun to lose faith in parliamentary democracy. And I said, what can I do at my level, at least in Mumbai, to re-establish people's faith in parliamentary democracy? And we basically created a mock parliament initiative where we went to colleges in South Mumbai. We created mock parliaments and debates in those colleges. We allowed the brightest students from each of those colleges to come together, and we've taken in the last 5 years about 600 students to New Delhi, where every year we take them during the winter session. They meet the Speaker of Parliament, they meet the Vice President of India, who's also the Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. They meet several political leaders, they meet journalists like yourself, and they get a 360-degree view on what is parliamentary democracy entail. They even visit the Parliament building, and they're sitting in the viewers gallery.
So you're saying get engaged in the process much earlier on in life than perhaps
later? So I think for example, I was the first MP to do this. So the Speaker Meera Kumar said, Milind, you're the first MP who's done this, and we unofficially partnered with the Speaker's office. Now, to me, that's a very big issue. If every politician, every political party could make that even a part of their manifesto and say, I'm going to get young people.
It's like civics lesson 3.0.
It's like, exactly. It's like civics 101 was in school, which some of us paid attention, some of us didn't. But it's really like, you're right, 301 civics in the real world civics. You're actually coming there, engaging, meeting with the real people who are making the country run. So my frustration in the last 5 or 10 years in politics has been, I think, the way we kind of debate issues. And I still would like to believe that a large number of Indians in Mumbai or in other parts of the country are still going to hold candidates accountable for issues that are not even, that we don't see on 9 p.m. primetime news. And that's the good news. The good news is that voters, constituents, Indians are much smarter than just following what's on the headline news and breaking news. Because those are the issues that impact people's lives.
But it can also get very local, and as a member of parliament, you may not be able to respond. And I think that's a point.
Well, fair enough. That is true. But at least if they're debating the right issue, so if someone's talking about education being a serious issue, if a woman is saying, for me, education is a very critical issue. How is my child going to get a job? And really debate how we're going to get a job. If tomorrow, a leader from the opposition party today is saying we should become a manufacturing base, and it's very easy to say that, and that's a nice rhetorical statement to make, but how are you going to make it a manufacturing base? Unfortunately, in my ministry, the work we've done to encourage electronics manufacturing in India in the last few years, to create what we call an ESDM base, which is Electronic Systems Design Manufacturing Base, to set up semiconductor fabs, which is the heart and soul of any electronics, to reduce our dependence on foreign imports. Those are the things that should be debated in our country, because those are the things that are going to create manufacturing
But there's
jobs.
been a lot of debate on fabs, but they've not happened. I think that.
Well, that's good if there's a debate. So I welcome if there's a debate and there's criticism on it. But I'm saying we've reduced I think our political discourse to just these sound bites and not to the details, and that's what kind of frustrates
So let
someone
me
like
quickly sort of sum up and then ask
And
you.
coming again
forward
to say
question.
2G, for example. Even if you look at the 2G scam, when you talk to someone, what is the 2G scam? Most people won't even know what it's about. If you explain to them that this was a policy that wasn't taken by the Congress government, it was taken by Mr. Vajpayee in his tenure as Prime Minister of India, and that very policy was we just continued that policy, and that policy today has led to tremendous growth.
Making money.
Making money, but a lot of people also getting access to mobile phones and also getting access to the internet. And that's what a public-private partnership model is about. And today, the fact that we've suddenly, without any debate in the country, no debate in the public domain, with the stroke of a pen, the Supreme Court of India says no, move from 2003 to an auction policy. You recently concluded auctions. Most of the operators who were interviewed said they'll have to pass that high cost on to the consumer. What impact will that have on teledensity? Will we continue to see the teledensity growth rates that we've been seeing in the last decade? Will it come down? Those issues, unfortunately, are not debated, and that's a bit frustrating.
Okay, so hope to engage with you on that again. So I think a couple of points that I'll take away. You've worked to create a more connected society, particularly for young India, and that has its plus points and negative points, but let's say that there have been good pluses because of that. The second is you're telling people that this is a tough world that we live in. It's also, so therefore you've got to be realistic, be idealistic, because that's where you should be. I mean, that's where you should be if you're young. Let me then ask you about what you intend to do if you were to come back to power as a thematic. I think not specifically in information technology or shipping or so on.
Sure.
And for young India.
For young India, the thing that I want to, I'm committed.
Or maybe I can include the third one. You want to really take Civics 3.0 across the country. Maybe bring more young people at an earlier age into the world of politics.
Well, one thing that I want to continue to do, I think, at a youth level, is the feedback that I've received in the last few years with regards to this youth parliament initiative that we have, with regards to regular job fairs and skills training initiatives that we run for underprivileged youth in South Mumbai. Young people who are even in South Mumbai, who come from less privileged backgrounds, who've studied in vernacular medium schools, municipal schools, government aided schools, even they have very high aspirations. Even they aspire to run large companies, to work in large multinationals, to maybe become entrepreneurs, to maybe become politicians. And one thing that I want to do, which I think is a very unique thing again, is I want to create a student council, which is a group of youth leaders, at least in my constituency. I might even like to expand it to Mumbai city, who can advise me on youth issues, both at a local level and more importantly at a national and policy level. I think that is something which is very, very critical, because I've done everything in my power to open up my office and my setup to young people. I regularly engage with people online. We send regular quarterly and fortnightly newsletters to our constituents. Even now, while I'm creating a to-do manifesto list, I'm one of the first politicians who's using social media to create an interactive to-do manifesto list for South Mumbai. We're asking people to give their suggestions. We have a to-do SOMU hashtag. So for me, I think I don't want to be arrogant ever and say I have the solutions for youth. I think that's a very arrogant position for any political leader to take.
So council involve more people.
But I think being able to mentor them, being able to set up a format and a platform that allows them to share their experience, me to share my experiences with them, and them to tell me what they aspire towards and to work out solutions with them which are realistic and achievable. That is something I seek to take forward in the next few years.
Okay, so that's your key point. One unfinished agenda that you wish you had time to finish before we ran into elections, but you hope to bring back. Again, slightly more youth focused.
Well,
or young India focused.
On a youth focused agenda, I just think that in the last 3 years that I've been a minister in this Ministry of Communications and IT, I couldn't have asked for a better ministry in spite of all the controversies it's been in. Because as a young person, I love technology. I love gadgets. I love using the internet. I unfortunately use my mobile phone a lot. And I think every youngster today is, in good ways and in bad ways, addicted to their handset. And I think if there's an unfinished agenda, it's really to ensure that what we've embarked, especially with rural areas, we've embarked on a very ambitious project to connect 250,000 panchayats in our country to a national optical fiber backbone, which is like building an infinite lane highway. And it's one of the first examples really I can think of where the government of India is actually putting the horse before the cart in terms of infrastructure. It's where infrastructure is preceding development and not the other way around. And that is going to be very exciting in the years ahead when we see that rolled out. Because when you see panchayats connected to a national optical fiber backbone, to high-speed internet, and you see last mile connectivity going into talukas, into villages, it's going to be so exciting because the way people are going to access education, the way they're going to access healthcare services, the way farmers are going to have access to markets, the opportunities it's going to throw up at a local level. I think that is something which is an unfinished task. The good news is it's already begun, work is underway, but it's going to be very exciting to see how that plays out and how young people actually embrace that, especially in rural areas.
Milind Deora, thank you very much for speaking to us and all the best.
Thanks, Govind.
Thank you.
Thank you.